Father Hardon in your own life? Because you had, is it an exaggeration to say hours and hours of formation personally, of talks by Father Hardon?
Many hours. I could say at least 5-6 years, every 2 weeks for 3-4 hours.
Wow.
So
and tell us about who Father Hardon was and what was his message to young men and to people in general about the Catholic faith.
Was to live the faith and share the faith. You know, the book you were just showing me just reminded me of, I remember he used to always say, write as much as you can, share the faith. This Friday, I think we have St. Anthony Claret.
Yeah.
And he, if you read some of his writings, he said that he says, if you have a book, it's like a missionary, never gets tired, the homily stays the same, and it goes through many, many hands. So Father Hardon always encouraged everybody to write. And so even I go now, that was the root of why I write. Thank God I was able to write 13 books now.
Wow.
And it was all inspired by him, know about it. He says, write books, spread the faith. This is the best way we could bring through the media. So it's so important. So he was a man, I know, diligent. I don't know how many books he's written, but I know he's written a mountain of books. And that's why he started also the program. What was it, for the Institute of Religious Life?
Yes, with Father Downey. Yep.
So it was all about spreading faith. I know he's trying to get priests and people to spread it, and so he always wanted to keep it going. And he knew spreading the faith was the most important.
Now he was not welcomed by his own community. He suffered greatly. I just know that as a fact that he was too orthodox. Okay, meaning he didn't compromise on the faith. Did he, in his talks, warn the people that he was speaking to be aware of the term modernism and how to deal with modernism? Did he talk about that?
Sure. I see he would refer it often, talking about, changing the faith and changing it to the world, and how the truths of the faith were trying to be changed, inside the church itself. So he would tell people that be very careful in picking a seminary, and say there was not like more than a few handfuls of good, solid seminaries, where people would get solid formation. And so he said that we have to be very prudent, and he said that you have to be very wise these days because the faith is being attacked. And I never forgot what he said. He said the crisis in the church more than anything else is the crisis with the hierarchy.
Yes.
Where they don't have the solid base. He said maybe a lot of these priests who came, up in the hierarchy, they themselves didn't have formations, and he thought he was talking often, because it was, I think, in the middle 80s or beginning 80s where his talks where he was saying the Holy Father John Paul II was always talking about how we need to re-educate the clergy.
Yeah.
It's how important it is. So, and I think even to this day, I believe it's improving, praise God, but I think there's still a big way to go in getting the improvement of the clergy on basic things in their formation. And he met with priests, he met with seminarians, he met with nuns, anything he could do to strengthen them in their faith. And he tells stories about his fellow Jesuits and how many of them lost their faith, and how he would stay hours and hours with them. And thank God some would come back, but many wouldn't. And he said that it came down to pride, because the Jesuits, to go in the order, you have to be, you got to have a high IQ and intelligence. And he said their pride was so deep that they didn't understand the Eucharist, so they wouldn't believe it. And he said because of that, he said that was the number one reason the priests leave the priesthood, is because of their lack in belief of the Eucharist.
Wow.
It's the number one reason.
He sounds so much like an Archbishop Fulton Sheen message.
Wow, that's amazing.
I've thought about it.
You know him more than anyone else.
Yeah, but the two of them seem to be, Bishop Sheen died in 79, Father Hardon, I believe, at the turn of the century.
And then you're right. I remember you always say, I remember heard often Bishop Sheen said he would make his holy hour each day.
Yeah.
And then Father Hardon would also refer in an unhumble way that he said minimum a day you'd spend 3 hours in front of the Blessed Sacrament.
Wow. And is it true that Father Hardon was so focused when it came to the work of the church that I've heard terms where he would just say, he wouldn't take a break. He was just, like, if there was a talk he was going to give in Milwaukee, and then in the evening he might take a train ride or something, a plane ride, he'd be speaking the next day. In other words, he was constantly on the go. Is that what you understood?
Yes, this guy wouldn't stop. He made me look like I'm slow, and I always got I'm going full speed, and I go, geez. Talking about his train ride, I remember he was telling me he was on a train ride, and because he dressed as a priest, some guy took him and I guess he was mad at the clergy, and father was kind of frail, older, and they pushed him on the ground on his back, hit his head, and he said he grabbed on to one of the folders that he was almost thrown out of the killed on the tracks, and he just said he said a prayer. He said, "God have mercy on you," or "God forgive you," and he said that he never saw him again because the doors closed and he was left on the ground, on the platform.
Now, Father, I heard this from a friend of mine, Mike Wick. You know Mike Wick.
Yes, no, Mike.
I've known him for 40 years, and he told me, because he worked with the Institute on Religious Life, when Father was dying, and he was dying of, old age, but, he was suffering greatly. And I was told that he was there dying, going, more. In other words, more pain that he could offer up for the church. Because what Mike said is that Father was making reparation for the outrages that were going on in the church at the end of his life, and he was just making reparation. And so he I call him a saint, because I think someday they're going to have him as a saint in the church, maybe 100 years from now. But when they look at his life, he sure lived a saintly life, that he was uniting his suffering at the end of his life and giving it all to Jesus. Does that sound like a Father Hardon?
100%. That's how many of his talks, he would repeat it, and you put it into your heart and soul. And so, I heard he was even offered morphine. He said, I don't want nothing. So he took no anesthetic, nothing for his pain. Yeah. And I heard he was greatly in pain, suffering terribly.
Right.
Unbelievable, the suffering that he knew more than anything else. I mean, the way he taught and lived, how suffering united to God is a blessing to bring the souls back to God.
Father, is it a fair statement to say, now that you're a priest for 25 years or more, that Father Hardon helped form you to become the priest that you are, and that possibly, and I'm not saying for sure, but that if you didn't have Father Hardon kind of warning you and forming you about the priesthood, that you probably wouldn't be the priest that you are today. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I would, at least, I'm probably the most kindest way I could put it, I'd be very confused. Yeah. And when if you don't have a sound foundation, when you go into seminaries and you hear other stuff, and you don't have a basic, then you don't know which way is left or right. And so he was solid in the truth. And when I've heard a lot of priests, and I'm sure even I'm not perfect at all, when priests speak, they say a lot of good, holy things, and absolutely, and the truth, he said, I already talked about the truth. He said the truth comes into the soul like the body rejects poison, in the sense that if you got like sliver, or you take something that's bad for you, your stomach starts vomiting it out right away. He says, and that's how we reject truth on a natural level. And so he said the truth is so important. So people will be confused for a while, but if they seek the truth, finally they will find it. Absolutely, he said. And so he was very strong on giving me basics of the truth, the foundation. And like I said, when I hear priests and stuff, they say a lot of good things. You could call them a mixed bag, maybe. That's a phrase, like there's some good stuff and then some stuff confused. But Father, when I heard him speak, it's like I felt I was up in a plane speaking, breathing high altitude oxygen. I didn't need a filter. Yeah. He was that good.
Did he ever cover in any of the courses a real catechesis on the Mass?
He went down to parts of Masses. Yeah, he broke the Mass up.
What would he give us a little summary of what he would say the Mass is all about? I'm assuming it's not just some, banquet. I want to hear what he has to say.
No, I never forget the way he taught it. So I've always remembered, and I teach people the same way. So he said that, people say the Mass is a sacrifice. And so, a sacrifice, he said, is something you have that's precious to you. If I give away my liver and I'm a little kid, I'm not giving any sacrifice away, but I give my cake away, that's precious to me. So God's life, of course, is precious as he came here on earth. And he said that we always say that sacrifice at a Mass, but how is it a sacrifice? We always, after communion, we say our sacrifice and yours. We offer to God, and we're holding up the chalice and the host. And so what we're saying is that sacrifice, he says, is in the essence of the will. In the essence of the will. So, if a mother forced me to, he goes freely to force me to share your cake with your brother. I said, no. If she threatens to take it from me, I'm not sacrificed. I'm just trying to save myself a piece by losing it. It's not, a sacrifice is freely given. So he said that I'll give it an analogy, how I use it. First, let me give his. He says, so when Jesus died, as we know, he died on the cross, and it was a bloody sacrifice. So he died, and it was a one sacrifice, good forever. Even the Protestants would agree with that. And so, but the graces that you would say, all the graces that he won in Calvary were given in an incredible canyon. And all the graces are there, and they're distributed at each Mass. So he said the graces he won come forward, and the doors are open, and graces pour forth like maybe from the wall of a dam. And so he says that if your soul is open, and the sacrifice, he said, Jesus really offered himself and really died. So at the Mass, he really comes, he says, from heaven, when the words of consecration are said, and he is on the altar, and he is literally speaking with his human lips. Father, I offer myself to die again for all those here and those in the world, please. So his offering is the essence of sacrifice. The analogy is, they say my car wasn't working. I said, could you give me to take me to church? Oh, okay, if I'm rather busy, but if there's no one else and you need to say Mass, I'll take you. That's a great sacrifice, and God will bless you for it. Second time around, actually the car breaks again. I said, oh no, I hate to bother you. I got to get my car. But you said, and I got my car fixed at that moment. But the grace is, you were willing to sacrifice. So it's in God's eyes, it's equal like the first one, because you were willing to do it and was ready to do it. So at each Mass, when God offers to die for us, Jesus, the graces are equal on Calvary, and that's where all the graces are distributed. So it's the wanting to give yourself to God and make that sacrifice.
If you like the message of Virgin Most Powerful Radio, type in under comments, Jesus is King.